Welcome to Classic Movie Salon. Today we're talking about the 49th parallel, or just 49th parallel, which is the border between Canada and the US. Who hasn't seen a movie about that involving Nazis? Me, I had not seen this one at all. I will be joined, as always, by Colleen and Matthew, who are right here, right now. And talk to you soon. How are you, Colleen? How are you?
Hi, thank you. How are you?
Groovy.
How those things?
How is all in the northeast of the United States?
Spring is on the way. It's sunny. It's no snow. It's good.
Nice. Matthew
How's
Ward,
California?
is the weather is redundant as always.
Just checking.
Unless it rains. So I guess we're all done
Yeah.
flooding, and but we still have it. I guess we have a teeny drought, but it's nothing compared to
Nothing to, good. That's good news. Good news. Good news.
And Matthew Ward, how is all in the UK? Has spring sprung?
Yeah, it's been scorchy out today. We've been out exploring some remarkable archaeology. We explored a huge border wall, which was built 1,600 years ago.
Whoa.
Walls. Walls are up.
The odd thing was it was built by an invading force to seize land from the native peoples. And the invading force were my Anglo-Saxon ancestors. And they built it to seize the land from the native Romano-British people.
Interesting.
And then it got even better because next to the border wall was a Bronze Age burial mound. So that's about 3,500 years old, maybe 4,000 years old.
Wow.
Which was then later reused by the Romans as a temple site. So you had all these amazing layers of history all in one place. Extraordinary. And it was scorching sun. I got some sunburn on my face as a result, so it was really nice.
And Matthew, where was this exactly?
This is just near Cambridge in the east of England.
Okay.
Wonderful.
If you look at the map of England, you have a sort of lump sticking out the right-hand side, which is East Anglia. And that was the area that was invaded first by these ancestors of mine. And if you draw a line sort of vertically down that lump that sticks out, that was the sort of natural border. Dictated by geography and geology, and they built a border wall across one of the bits of dry high ground to stop King Arthur and his Knights defending the land against them.
Interesting. That is interesting.
Very cool. And also interesting is when I posted the link to what the movie was this week, Matt Carman, he said build a wall because he saw where the 49th parallel was.
Yeah.
We're trying to stop that from happening. We'll see. Different border.
Yeah, pretty much now it's just the United States is hanging on for dear life under the auspices of a mentally ill person and his because there's no other excuse for this.
Raving lunatic.
Mm-hmm.
But,
raving and then some.
And then some. I don't think we can afford this wall, but,
Well, that's the lovely thing about it, isn't it? It would cost squillions to build a wall. For about 1/50 of the cost, you can improve the economy on the other side of the wall, and that would stop people wanting to get across the border.
Well, there you go. But that makes sense, you see, and this person we're talking about doesn't have any, so,
Yes, he doesn't even know when he needs to stay and sign a piece of paper that he's agreed to go into a room to do. It's like everyone's elderly relative when they've started to get dementia. Why did I walk into this room? Have I had my tea?
Yeah, it has that feel to it.
To make a corollary, the New York Times has a 360 video today where a chimpanzee, they were in a Kenya in a chimp reserve, and the chimp got a hold of the camera and was doing selfies with the 360 video and did quite a good job with it. So my point is that the monkey can do a good job with the camera, and yet our government is not in quite as capable hands. There's something to say, that the New York Times put this video on its homepage today, on its app, and said, look at this, look at this, look at this. It was quite good, quite a good video. Done by a monkey.
I really don't know because it has already passed what I thought what it would take for.
No, we're not
Right.
there yet.
I know, but
Yeah.
we passed what I thought would be the thing that would make people go, oh yeah, this is a problem on all sides of the fence, and that is not happening even a tiny little bit.
Well, ridiculous has a new threshold now.
Yes.
So, you know, it's
Marilyn saying, please impeach him.
no.
Yeah. Oh, let me double check my Snapchat in case somebody can't get in.
Could we peach him instead? I mean, I do have a set of a medieval pillory, you know, the wooden frame that you put somebody in to throw things up at him.
And throw peaches?
Yeah, rotten peaches at him.
Oh, that's a start. It's a humane start, I suppose.
But not fresh peaches, because they'd be quite firm. They need to be really overdone. And also then they become juice, and then lots of insects would come and try to eat him.
Oh, well, then it gets pretty gnarly. Yeah. Brings it to another level. That's good. We're getting into the nasty range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like in that great film, The Princess Bride. Taking lots of pain. Is it pain? I don't think I know that one.
Yeah, Marilyn saying, what will it?
Marilyn's going bigger. Rotten pumpkins.
I think in Arizona, somewhere like that, they have the annual pumpkin chunkin competition.
Pumpkin chucking. Yep.
Yeah, where it's the competition to see how far you can fling a pumpkin. And they've built these enormous compressed air guns now, which look like super guns.
Oh, that's with the potatoes.
Yeah. Well, no, they're doing with pumpkins too. You know, these are gun. They look like First World War artillery pieces. You know, they've got gun barrels like this.
Oh, that's a cannon.
Basically a cannon.
Yeah. I didn't know about the cannons. When I found out about the pumpkins, I was the potatoes guns. I was a little kind of embarrassed in a general sense for mankind, particularly this country. But then I found out they do lawnmower racing and all these other things. But then I, took a trip across America and found out there's not a whole lot going on. So, there it is.
Well, lawnmower racing started in the UK.
It did, yes.
Before it got to the US.
I did. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it started in the UK in 72 or 73.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know a lot about this equipment.
I know way too much about lawnmower racing because I wrote a screenplay based in the world of professional lawnmower racing, and I also went to the nationals.
Did you now?
Oh,
do tell.
For the national championship of Staybil, STA-Bill, BIL was the name of the sponsor. They were a fuel stabilization product. Like if you were going to store a car or a boat or something and not use it for a while, you're supposed to
put it away for safekeep, preserving, and it's precious.
Exactly.
So put it.
So they started on April Fools. It must have been in the mid 90s, I believe, middle late 90s. And I don't know when I tripped over them. Actually, when I was a private investigator, I tripped over them, and I ended up as a private investigator under pretext interviewing people who I later hung out with.
No, isn't that a violation of
they had no idea that I was.
Of private investigators, like, I was in your trash, and now.
Oh yeah. They had no idea when I was there that happened. They just thought I was some nut job from Los Angeles who flew himself to Ohio to hang out with a bunch of professional lawnmower racers.
Hey, you got a story out of it. You got a script.
Well, I had the script. I had the script and the story. Now I was going, yes, I have quite the checkered past, Marilyn. I went to just kind of like pick up any lingo, I knew there was something that was going to happen there. And I didn't bring a camera purposely. So I wouldn't have that kind of barrier, and it was more like hanging out, but I did tape record a bunch of stuff like inspections. There was slang. There were 4 different classifications of lawnmower. There was
Cool.
stock AP, BP, SP, and FX. Oh no, 5. And each one had its own level of modification you could do to the lawnmower. And once you got up to FX, you were like, it's crazy town. It's just way too fast.
Goodness.
And I hung out.
Did those guys have the push ones as well? Because in Britain, the lowest grade is the ones where you've got to push.
No, they're all ride. But interestingly, it is not gender specific. So men and women can race in the same race against each other, which is not.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean that happens in NASCAR.
But theoretically, you can do that here too. But there's just no women racers.
Well, there's not a lot of them.
No.
Yeah, so there were father-daughter teams, and Bobby Cleveland, who is out of Locust Grove, Georgia. How I remember that, I still have no idea. And he was a bachelor. He had
Your life was changed by lawnmower racing, Joe.
It was. He turned his whole first floor into a workshop, and he is an engineer at, or was, I don't know if he still is, at Snapper, the lawnmower company. So he designed a monster lawnmower, like a monster truck. But when he showed up in Ohio with his racing team, so there's 3 other guys, they are dragging what would be a NASCAR trailer, like a car to have a race.
Wouldn't that be an unfair advantage? I mean, he didn't race, did he?
No. What I'm saying is that they would pull in what is supposed to be a NASCAR trailer, and when they flip the sides of it, it is 6 lawnmowers strapped down because they raced in multiple classifications. And they have the NASCAR suits, the flame suits with all the patches. They have them hanging up on hangers on the side.
Oh my God, it's
pristine,
hardcore.
like it's pristine, like it looks like they're pros. And Bobby Cleveland kind of took me under his arm, and he was like the Dale Earnhardt, like one of the most popular guys in all of professional American lawnmower racing. And he was
sorry, this is too funny.
Well, it's not really professional, and that's the thing is, like, they have a sense of humor about it, but they're also dead serious. And what happens is, like, it sounds ridiculous, but I've gone to 2. I mean, I went to the Nationals, which is 2 days, and I went to a semifinal race in some place in California, south of here. It was just a one-off thing, but you have to lean off the lawnmower to keep it on the.
It's like motorcycles. I saw them.
Yeah.
You have to put your knee off and go, because there's not this weight. There's this weight ratio, that the balance and the whole. Yeah, because there's a scene. The only reason I even know a thing about this is there's a scene in The Princess Diaries with Anne Hathaway and Julie Andrews, a movie, and the guy she's dating from Denmark, the prince, is helps the family in Wisconsin or wherever they were, Middle America, helps out with their lawnmower racing. The families are farmers, and they've got their John Deeres all tricked out, and they're yeah. Hey, Tachi. It's funny.
So Anne Hathaway's. Where's Tachi? I can hear her. I can't see her.
You will in a second.
Don't see me?
Oh, you should be able to.
Yeah, I see her. Do you see her?
I see you up on the top. Tachi, talk.
Hi.
Oh, there you go.
Yay! I can see you.
Okay.
Just on the voice thing. Also, if you change your view, you can change it to gallery view and see everybody at the same time, and not just speaker view. And that can be personal choice, computer by computer, so you can have everybody up at the same time. Tachi, how are things in Florida? We've had a weather check in the Northeast. Spring has arrived, apparently also in the UK. What's going on in Florida? Is it even more humid?
Yes. It's just more of the same, basically. You're starting to feel the change, because in the mornings now you're starting to feel it be less cool. So, yeah, it's less cool in the morning, so it's about the same, but less cool in the morning.
There's a little bit hot, and then very, very hot.
There you go. But it's not too bad yet, so that's
only April.
Yeah.
You got time.
Exactly.
Mm.
And Tachi, what's going on in TV channeling and Mediascope worlds?
Well, lots of things as per usual.
Anything
I'm
jump
sure
out
that
at you?
let's see. Okay, so a lot of the changes, not faces, but yeah, faces changes with Facebook. Those of you that are on Facebook, I'm sure that you've seen the recent change to face chat. No, excuse me, book snap. No, excuse me, whatever the hell they're calling themselves these days. And so now there is something called Facebook Snapchat stories. So I knew that something like this was going to happen when they did this with Instagram. It was only a matter of time before Facebook, which Instagram owns Facebook, started to do the same thing. So now you're able to. They have the filters. I forgot, what are these filters called?
Lenses.
Lenses. Thank you. Which they're also yeah, the lenses, but there's a special name for them. I'll look for it in a minute. Yeah, so I'll look for it in a minute. But there's a special name for the lenses. The same thing that Snapchat does and Instagram stories does as well. And so they have the lenses, and then they also have the stories where you can string together short snippets of video to make these stories, which can make what you're doing in Facebook stand out. So I kind of do see the purpose in this for it. But here's my thing, and this is just something I throw out there all the time. I understand seeing something that works on other platforms and incorporating it into your own and saying, hey, we're doing this now. But so damn blatantly, I mean, they didn't even bother to change the name of stories. They just said, we'll just call it stories just like they do. And it does the same damn thing. So there's like no ingenuity in it. There's very little difference between Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook now in terms of the stories. That's what gets me, that it's so blatant. And to me, it's a little bit troubling, maybe not to anybody else. But if you're an investor and you've invested in something, even though they have all this money now, you've invested in something that all they know how to do is copy other people, would you not be worried that they don't know how to do anything else? I'm just saying.
I agree on a bunch of points, and the argument that they're using, which granted is is to their advantage, the idea that stories, the stacking of either videos or still or text, sort of like we talked about last week, in camera editing, where you have just like on Snapchat, I take a 10-second snap, I post it. The next time I take another one, it will play after that one. So that's what happens on stories, on Instagram, on Facebook, and also confusing. And I don't know if this is ever going to stop, but apparently it's Facebook and Messenger have their own story set up, and they're not related.
They're not
They're
integrated.
not right now.
So they're like two different platforms run by Facebook that are both adding stories to pre-existing platforms.
For now.
Yes, for now. So the argument is that a story is just like the feed, just like a Twitter feed, a Facebook feed, and that it is not a concept, an idea, anything that can keep someone else from duplicating it in its entirety. And what I'm interested in, because I see like Chris Strub, like his name, I know a lot of Chris's. Chris Strub has pretty much announced that he thinks that Snapchat's done, and they're just going to last as long as their money does, and it's over, because Facebook's going to crush them. And I don't know where everyone got this story that somehow there's all these different social media platforms, and one of them is going to be the one that dominates everything in all countries. That seems highly unlikely to me.
That's the narrative, though.
Don't we just have one washing powder and one brand of TV and
Exactly.
one TV channel?
If you look at everything that's gone on in media, it is a fracturing of audience and more options on demand. It is not less options on the internet. And I don't see how. I don't understand the mentality, and none of it is, and I've seen a lot of other people, so much of the discussion with all the social media heavy hitters and experts and consultants and who in the hell.
Experts.
They talk about these platforms like they're teams. They talk about them like this is sports, and that one of them is going to win the championship. And that is ridiculous. And it's not, and it has no similarity to any other measurement of any other industry in the planet in history. No one has ever looked at an industry as one's going to kill everybody.
Doesn't it though? What about the nightly news? You had Dan, you had Peter Jennings, you had,
You had a number 2 and you had a number 3.
Yeah, right. And well, but they were constantly shifting. At one point, so-and-so was the winner, Dan Rather and Morley, whoever they are. I don't even know. Walter Cronkite was the one back in the day. And then it was kind of like this one, CBS had it for a while, then it shifted to NBC, then it shifted to, then CNN came along. And then now they're constantly, that Fox, I hate to say it, is still, I think, beating the both of them, MSNBC and CNN. So it kind of does, the pendulum swings, I think, from time to time. This is
right,
new,
but it is not
new media.
But it's not in totality. There's always a number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah. So
you're right. You're right. But you know what does change and what it does mirror is the fact that there are very few companies that own everything. So even though there is a fracturing or a fragmentation of audience because there are now more options, look at who owns the options. It's probably like 5 companies. So even though we think it's a fragmentation, it's really just more of the same.
Right, but when I'm saying fragmentation, I'm saying go to the App Store, count the number of platforms. That's fragmentation. And I'm not saying that the bottom 300 apps are going to survive. They're not. But there's going to be far more players, and I don't understand this. Because I said to Chris, I'm like, so when's your estimation of when Snapchat runs out of money and ceases to exist? And he's like, yeah, I don't know that part yet. Oh, okay. And I all love in the world for Chris Strub. Nice guy, he's done real good things. But I don't agree with all this stuff. I think it is an interesting story. And when you get a bunch of people, it turns into a bunch of people at a sports bar talking about teams like their managers and coaches, and we don't see the books. I mean, now that Snapchat's public, there'll be a little more out in the open, but otherwise it's hard to judge what a company that's worth billions of dollars is going to do and how long they're going to last.
Well, the way they last is diversify, become conglomerate like News Corporation, like NBC Universal, to start acquiring other media so that they can stay media, but perhaps get into other forms.
But they're the new media that's crushing all. They are
right. But you have the print journalism digitizing. You have other forms converting and updating to modern types. You have television. You have media. Somebody will get with. The next thing you might have is Netflix buying, merging with one of these chat forums, and because it's the next best thing.
Or Apple buys Netflix.
Or Apple buys, So it's just the convergence of the different forms of media and staying in that arena, in that family, and just putting not all your eggs in the one basket, because that's never how it's worked in the past. Is just to get into a conglomerate, to stay fresh and not keep, just stay growing, emerging, and branching out and diversifying.
But what about the elephants in the room that aren't in the room? The Chinese, for example, you've got massive.
They have their own stuff because of the censorship. They've got Weibo.
Yeah, exactly. But if they get bored and think, what do we do with all this money that we're sitting on top of? And they launch something that is accessible worldwide, they can wipe the floor with everybody just by throwing cash at it. So the idea that this guy's come up with, that there's going to be this fight between these people like a pair of gladiators and only one will be left standing. Terribly sorry. History's always shown us when that happens, somebody else walks in the room and walks off with a prize while the idiots are hitting each other.
Exactly. And a case in point, if you look back in the 80s when there was the video game wars of Coleco, of Atari, all of those old school, what happened? They were fighting each other, and then they got bored with the market, or the market decided it was bored, and they all silently pulled out. And who was waiting in the wings? Nintendo. Exactly. So you're absolutely right, Matthew. That always happens, and I agree with you, Joe. I don't really buy this whole doomsday forecast of Snapchat is just waiting to implode for a couple of reasons.
No.
They may be foolish, but I don't think they're foolish enough to have gone public with no damn plan. We just don't know exactly what it is yet. Maybe they don't either. But I don't think that they would have been foolish enough to do so. So I think there's something else coming from them. I've been saying for a while that because, when Snapchat, sorry, not Snapchat, I confused it with Facebook, Snap, whatever they are, when Facebook decided, oh no, we're not a media company, we're a tech company. And then they had to backtrack and said, well, we are a media company, but a different type of media company. I'm like, you don't know. Decide and then come and tell us what you are. So when they decided to do all this, but they've been doing media. All of these places, they're media companies. I don't give a damn what they say. Yes, they have an aspect of tech, but one to many equals media. That's just basic Comm 101, Mass Comm 101. So they've all been doing media. So I would not be surprised to see any or all of these companies, which is already starting to happen. I'm waiting for Facebook Studios to come because it's coming. I'm waiting for Facebook Music to come because it's coming. All you have to do is look at their job search board and see the types of positions they're hiring for. That will tell you, unless they're hiring specifically from inside, and most of the time they're not, that will tell you exactly what direction they're looking to probably go in if it's not exact. So Snapchat has something up their sleeve. Could it be something like a Snapchat Studios, short form video, maybe that type of thing? It very well could be. So don't cry for me, Argentina, for Snapchat yet.
Oh no, and I'll tell you where to look for things, and they're not going to give away the secret sauce or their long-term strategic plans. But if you want to look for anything telling, the place to look is not going to be on their actual financial statements, but in the back of their annual report, in the notes to the financial statements, all the boring words in the pages that come after the income statement and the balance sheet. That's where you can see interesting little stories about where they have to disclose things about contingencies and plans and information and all the backstory to what's going on in the financial statements. Any money that they've put aside and appropriated, they have to disclose that because the investors need to know, and people have to be able to discern it. So you want to get a hold of anybody. The hard part is getting a hold of it, but it's public somewhere. It's public information. Get a hold of the Snapchat first annual report when it comes out and see what's in there. And that might reveal a teeny bit of what's going on. And it's not that hard to read. It's you might get a hold of some accounting student. They'll help you decipher it. And it gives a little window.
And the other interesting part of this puzzle is that Snapchat said no to Facebook buying them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was
because they probably already had this planned.
It was
$2 billion he offered the kid.
So for them to walk on that and continue is because not most people, but I think a lot of the startup culture mentality is somebody wants to buy your company, you're going to walk away with a chunk of shit.
Everybody talks about their exit. They want an exit. They start a company wanting an exit, and that's it. They don't even.
Yeah. Which
especially when they say,
all of us
I like it so much, I bought the company.
Exactly. Which pisses everybody off. If you look at all of these startups and where people start to really connect with and like the technology and create things and spend their time creating things, and then in the wings, they're waiting to get acquired. And then everybody, and I keep watching this and I keep looking at everybody as they're all angry about, Platform X should do this and Platform Y. Why aren't they including us in the conversation? Because they don't bloody well have to. And they're not going to.
They don't know how.
And they don't know how, but they're also not interested. And I'm not going to say all the time, but for the most part, they're not interested because if they were, they would be trying to find a way to work with these content creators to make. I've seen it over and over and over, which is why my advice is always use these free platforms. They're great, but always, number one, have a plan B. Number two, have your own platform, someplace where you're storing your content, where you're not beholden to and dependent on these third-party apps for your livelihood or for your, that's just the thing.
But the thing about all those apps is that is the only way to get to that number of people.
Yes.
Other than an email list or running your own website with your own bulletin board.
Exposure. Yeah.
Then you have to get people to leave where they already are and go to where you want them to go, which is not
You're right.
what human behavior is right now. Human behavior
No.
is, I'm just kind of meandering around and then I trip over something and now I'm watching it.
But it's a total hit and run. I mean, like what Tachi was saying. I mean, this hit up, go in, start out, get out, take the money and
sure.
run, which is, a sandbag job for everybody else that you become loyal, you start using a product, then they're never in it in the first place because like a lot of these companies don't ever come in with anybody equipped to help run a business, let alone forecast it and plan it out for any kind of long-term, success.
Look at the Blab people. That started Blab, if I'm not mistaken, started as a project for a contest, a project for like some
like
sort
that.
of
Something
hackathon.
Were they at a hackathon
Yeah.
or at a Disrupt?
Yeah, it was some sort of
or
something like that. I think it was either like a Disrupt or something like that. There was no real plan there, clearly, because they barely had an exit strategy. But F you and all your kin, we're gone. So.
Well, and they kind of said that they didn't even make a
they
bones
did.
about it. Yeah, they just came out and was your fault. You didn't do anything nice. But how about you didn't plan the money out? You didn't plan your budget. You didn't know how much servers were going to cost, and you didn't nurture your talent. So and you didn't think about, well, maybe if we charge a few bucks. I mean, it's just poor business planning. It's no thought whatsoever, and you certainly don't pass the buck if it's your business.
They like passing bucks.
Well, that's the lame way out. That's just it's irresponsible. I mean, that's not how you run a business.
Well, look at the bright side. At least they brought the four of us together.
We're together.
Oh, absolutely. But that's the cool thing about all of these apps, and now we're going on. It's not really a tangent. It's still related. But that's the interesting thing about all of these apps. The fact that I never would have met any of you probably if it was not for Blab. So I give all the credit in the world to Blab for that. My co-host from TV channeling, I met on Anchor. So even though Anchor is, now they're on 2.0 and doing this wonky thing, and there are many creators on Anchor that are not happy, it brought me and Kevin and some other fantastic people together. So that's the thing. Joe, you're absolutely right that it has the power. Only these types of apps that are this public has the power to draw this amount of people. You're right. You're absolutely right. What I'm saying is to leverage, and it's not that you could do it tomorrow or the next day or the next day. It will take time, but you have to leverage it somehow because it's inevitable that it will probably be gone. Depending on what the app is.
That's up to every individual to make the most of any situation, anywhere. The synergies, to take advantage of the synergies of any situation and just maximize your potential. And that's up to every individual, everywhere, anytime. And just keep looking, keep aware, keep alert, and benefit from whatever's out there, and just keep moving, keep going. That's, another thing Joe always says. All of us, everybody here is a doer. Everyone got to where they are in this group here because we kept going. Didn't take no for an answer. Won't stop, won't quit. Curious, interested,
Yes.
motivated, so.
Yes.
But
Here's a warning from history for anybody who might be coming on to buy Twitter or Snapchat or any of them.
That's not a Bugatti, is it?
Nope. There's an odd...
Aston Martin. That's the Aston Martin.
No, it's another British sports car, so well done for spotting it's British.
It's Jaguar.
Nope.
No.
I give up.
It's called TVR.
TVR.
TVR. Because the man who owned it was called Trevor. That's why it's called TVR.
Interesting.
British sports car company based in Lancashire, in Blackpool, for many years. They hand-built British sports cars with fiberglass bodies and ridiculously large engines that went like a piece of streamlined poo off a very shiny shuffle. They made that particular model, the Speed 12, when it was shown in a movie. I forget which movie, some kind of Fast and Furious kind of thing, or something with John Travolta in. It can't have been very good. It was in colour and it didn't have David Niven in, so who'd want to watch a movie like that? And a Russian guy with squillions and squillions of dollars watched the movie and he said, I'd like one of those. So we contacted the company and he said, right, can I buy one of these V12s? And they said, yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, you can buy them. We'll be a bit slow because we're just trying to sort the finances of the company out, and we're trying to sell the company, so it might delay things a bit. And Ivan the Terrible, whatever his name was, said, oh yeah, and the thing was, he was a kid. He was about 20 years old, and he'd just made like $1 million squillion $billion by owning some Russian gas industry or something. He was a 20-year-old kid with billions of dollars.
Mm.
So Ivan the Terrible said, so you're selling the company, so I could buy the car or I could buy the company. And he said, yeah, well, I suppose you could, yeah. So he said, right, here you go. Here's a check for whatever it is your company's worth. And he bought the company.
The whole company?
Bought the company, and he got the car. But because he was so rich and this company was so relatively small and so far away, once he got his car, he lost interest in it. And he just let the company close because it wasn't worth his time to do anything about it.
Too bored.
Bored, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was so rich, it would have cost him more in time than in money to do the slightest thing about it. So he just shut it down. He's bored now, close it down, I don't care. And that can happen, and that's happened many other times in history with companies. They're either taken over to take them at the market, or they're taken over by somebody really, really rich who realizes it's just too much bother to do something about it, and they just shut it down. And that could happen to any of these media companies. So instead of them winning the gladiator battle, they could be bought out and just...
I blame the seller, though. They should have known, instead of taking the money, again, take the money and run. Why, if it's a passion project of the car, why not keep it and sell it to someone who's in effect going to keep this going? Because in fact, it was such a beloved endeavor. And maybe, okay, they didn't have the money to keep it going, but maybe make it as contingent part of the sale that someone remains on board to help run it and keep it going. Contingency, something like that, because it's quite unfortunate. It's a beautiful car. It's a beautiful car. It may not have, maybe it didn't run very well. I don't know.
Oh no, that particular one went like thing. No, they made lots of different cars.
Okay.
They thought the guy was a dream come true, a fairy godmother, or in this case, a fairy godfather.
But had the Trevor, but he was an engineer then. If he went ahead.
He left the company band and he died, I think.
So there really wasn't anyone that had the love for it.
Well, they thought that this was a good choice. And the other thing about TVR, one of their cars was partially designed by a dog.
Sorry?
By a dog.
By a dog, yes. Yes. This one here, this model, the TVR, most people call it the Cerberus, but anybody who's studied classics would know it's a Kerbera. If you can see where the indicator is,
yes,
you see it's got that sort of double cutout where the indicator is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Aerodynamics.
No, that bit was designed by a dog. They had a clay model of the car where they were sculpting it, because this was made long enough ago that it wasn't done on a computer. It was just done by hand with clay. And the clay model was sitting on the work surface, and Trevor's dog jumped up and took a bite out of it. And that shape is the shape of the canine tooth of the dog.
Interesting.
Okay, there you go.
Leave it to Matthew Ward.
Interesting car design trivia.
Yes. So, yeah.
Indeed.
So the important point is that, sometimes people have got more money than sense and buy things.
But this is where, but it's a good point, because it comes into due diligence and how essential it is. If anyone's, has a company, thinking of getting a company or investing in a company or using a platform, as Tachi was mentioning, that the due diligence, but as a user, you don't always have the benefit of getting so much information, but the due diligence, it's two easy, simple words, but put together, it means dotting your I's and crossing your T's and finding out as much as you possibly can going in. And unfortunately, in this instant flash economy we have, people are just going in so blind and so uninformed and unaware of what they need to know and what they need to do to carry out a business endeavor or an investment or something. And a lot of people tend to be involved in all this, so you have to do your homework is the easy translation of due diligence.
And if I may also say, I'm not going to blame business schools 100% because there are certainly some wonderful business schools, but there are, especially in today's society, there are a lot of schools that have all these majors that are cash cows that they're just cashing in on and
Mhm.
don't really have the qualified faculty to teach them how to do this properly. Because one of the schools I was at, they had just an okay school of business. You know, it would work, but it's not. It was certainly not a Wharton, and certainly not.
Well, you
like
have to
a
look for,
Harvard.
it's important, and they don't emphasize this enough, an accredited business school
You need an
where,
accredit. But see,
yeah,
students don't know that.
I
They know
know, yeah,
business school and they go.
yeah,
Or they know school and they go. They don't think
yeah,
about accreditation in the field, which means that there is some level of standards that you have to live up to
yes,
as a department or a school of in
yeah,
order to be accredited by this body. And so
exactly.
accreditation does matter in many cases. And so
Hmm.
sometimes you have people that maybe they were in business, yeah, in the 70s, but they haven't done anything since. And so they're
Yeah,
teaching from an antiquated model and
yeah,
from knowledge that they knew back then. And so if this is what you're transferring to new graduates, well, no damn wonder.
no, there's no,
No damn
you,
wonder.
yeah, you have to check the credentials of faculty, the longevity of the program. Where are your graduates working? Are they getting employed directly? You know, the graduation rate, the hiring rate of the graduates, their tenure, the involvement of alumni in school, the whole history of the school, and it's not just any business program. And likewise, I'll take it a step further, where if you're going into technology and engineering, and I'll be bold and say, because my father is an engineer and brilliant, but they don't teach anything about business in any of the
No.
and a
No,
lot.
you're absolutely right. If you, and this is the gripe, whenever I go to, sorry to interrupt you,
No, you
I'm just
go
very
with,
passionate about
well,
this.
you're an academic, so go for it.
Very passionate about this. Whenever I go to, you guys know I make it my business to go to industry conferences, because if I'm teaching industry, there's no way I can teach you industry and A, not work in the industry, and B, not be up on what's going on in the industry. So I'm very much about faculty being active in industry, not just publishing and research and teaching. That's important too. That's part of it, but you have to be involved in the industry. And so what happens is you tend to get all these the faculty that it's twofold. You're so busy trying to keep up with your requirements for the
Can't,
university for
yeah.
teaching, research, and service that you don't have time, or sometimes these departments, they give you $1,000. That is your airfare in most cases if you're going to a conference far enough away, and that's it. So there's also not the support there financially sometimes to be able to do those things. So there's that, but then there's also the willingness of the professor or the instructor to do that. And this is why I always raise my hand and I say I don't buy this all the time, because I've had 5 academic fellowships. I was a fellow for for a lot of ones, but one big one, the Emmys Foundation, the Television Foundation. I was a fellow for them. Why? Because I sat down at the computer and said, fellowships, where can I find money for conferences and things? And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that is not being done. And when you don't do that as a professor, you are hurting your students, because they're looking to you for guidance.
Yeah.
They're looking to you to tell them, all right, well, how do I get my feet wet? How can I do this? And if the last place you work was Enron, there's going to be a problem.
Yeah, you have to make it relevant. You have to get the students engaged in practical applications of their discipline and say, you're not going to sit in the classroom much longer. For when you go out there, this is how you're going to have to put this into use and talk to people and engage with people. And there's money involved. There's practical implications. You have to know how to interact and make it work, and that involves skills that go beyond your slide rule and your calculators and everything else and mathematics. It's just not
slide rule.
Well, I did. This is just the metaphor that comes to mind with science geeks. It doesn't. No one uses them anymore. But
well, some of us.
I still use a calculator too. I don't.
There's a slide rule in that cupboard just there.
But they're great. They're great to see. That's a great visual. I don't know. I just said it's a visual that I just love to see in terms of science, where you watch a great movie and you see someone figuring on that, and it's things going this way and that way, left and right. And I don't know, just stereotypical sort of image for, a kind of a tense moment too. And if like, oh, this calculation is so pivotal right now, and we have to see what happens, and it's up to them to save the world.
And the argument back when I was in school, whenever that was, about the calculators was, well, you're not going to have a calculator with you all the time.
You got to know math in your head.
And now you do.
Now you do. You have
a calculator all the time.
Yeah, but these people have to know not just how to come up with an algorithm or calculus. That's not enough.
But also, I think the other parts of it, beyond marketing, beyond just the realities of the marketplace, deciding, who, I am sure that there were other people that were Snapchat lookalikes who don't exist anymore, and I think that's the other part of the puzzle, is that no one, like, YouTube's 12 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is, that is, there aren't a lot of other platforms that have that kind of
That's a long time.
of history and do not appear like they're going anywhere. But also
they did it well. They did it well.
There wasn't any. They were the first to do it because it had never been done before. And
for all intents and purposes, they still don't have very much competition. So
Vimeo.
Well, they have competition just because their competition is everything, but there isn't a place that is like YouTube. There isn't.
Yeah,
it's the second most popular search engine behind Google,
Yes.
and it's owned by
Yes.
Google.
Yes.
And it's I used it not too long ago to look up tutorials to learn how to run OBS, and I've done it with other programs. So even with editing, I was using Final Cut Pro 7. I had a computer crash. I had to go buy another computer because I couldn't get the thing up. I was on deadline, and I bought the computer. I came back. I bought Final Cut Pro X 10, the upgrade, and when I opened it, it was a program
completely different.
Exactly. It was a program
completely
I'd never
different.
seen before. I don't know where anything is. I'm on deadline. And I'm like, wow, so you guys went from Final Cut Pro 7 to a completely different program that doesn't exist anywhere previously. And everything I know, I could run that thing blindfolded. Now all of a sudden, I'm on Google and I'm on YouTube. And what I'm doing is I'm searching for, how do I blank in Final Cut Pro 7 in Final Cut Pro X? And there's a 14-year-old kid teaching me how to do it. And I'm on deadline. It's with a client, and there's a 14-year-old who's helping me finish my work on YouTube for free.
That's it.
Yeah.
What's so funny is that so many people still don't realize this. I'm on various mailing lists for museums and heritage and archives and stuff. And every day you get people writing on the mailing list, does anybody know how to do this? And I'm thinking, in the real world, we just go on YouTube and find out, and it's all there.
All the answers are there.
Yeah.
And also, the other thing,
These terribly academic people, they don't know about YouTube.
which is just ludicrous to me. And the other thing about Google search is, just a little tip for anyone listening, or anyone who ever hears this over the years, that it will play nonstop into space. If you go to Google, when you do a search, if you look on the top, there's a menu there that changes what you're looking for. And there's one called Tools. If you're on the mobile, you'll have to scroll to the right or scroll to the left. You'll see it show up on the right. And you can choose either specific dates or just general dates for your search. Because especially when you're doing any kind of techie stuff and you're trying to figure something out, like I was looking, actually, I wanted to send someone a link for something about Snapchat, and I did the search for it, and the first things that came up were 2 years old, and I'm like, well, I know that's not going to be right. And you just go to Tools, change what the search date is, and you'll come up with something much more recent, and that way you're at least you're reading something that, because sometimes when they, like with Final Cut Pro, even version to version, when they don't totally upend the program like that, things aren't in the same place. And you're looking at the tutorial and you're clicking on the thing, and I'm like, it's not on mine. because you're looking at information from 2 versions ago, and they removed that. They called it something else, and it's over on the left now. So again, yeah, it's when all the post-production I did for Vampire Mob, figuring out the cameras, lenses, even which one I was going to buy, it was all done on the internet. I didn't go to a store to get advice. I didn't even go to friends to get advice. I was just kind of like looking what other people were posting about using these cameras, and somebody did a lens test with the lens I ended up buying. And then we had 3 of them. We were shooting with 3 of them.
Yeah, exactly. I do the same thing, Joe, because one of the things when I go to NAB, I still do that. That was my shopping time, but that's a huge marketplace and you can easily get overwhelmed. So I always usually go online first because I start getting emails from all the vendors that are going to be there. Hey, visit us at booth such and such. For some reason, they already know I'm coming, so they send me all these things.
They gave the list to them.
They gave the list to them, exactly, and I've been going since 2010, so they know I'm coming. Visit us here. And so I start to check out all of these things and what they have, and like, oh, okay. And then, I may have gone to something during the year before that had something new that came out. So I start to check all this stuff out. So I'm a little more strategic when I do go there to, oh, okay, well, does this do X, Y, and Z? What's the benefit of this over that? Because if you just go in like a blank slate, that's okay too, but it's helpful to have a little bit of background knowledge by using YouTube or Google or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's true, and it's good for pre-research too, because eventually, I think for me, I still like some hands-on and making it's an expensive purchase. You want to get it, see it, feel it, look through it. A lens, but to do all your backup research and everything else, the internet. But there's something about research in books that I still like. I don't know. But again,
no, I get it.
Yeah, some of that, but ultimately still I can get a quick answer here, and YouTube, I agree. It's a game changer. It really is. It really is.
And I think when it comes to things like business school, there is a lot of business school stuff online for free. So you can learn a lot from a lot of people who are in a bunch of industries who, especially when you look at all the keynote stuff, you look at all the panel stuff at all these different conferences, who all have YouTube channels and they put it up. So a lot of times it's almost like you can go and attend these conferences to some degree, at least from the information standpoint, and
you can
get stuff for free.
There's the MOOCs and there's the edX, and you can do these free seminars. So in a way, if you're going to start something up, if you're going to develop a new platform, forum, app, whatever it is, you can learn to code online. Well, then guess what? You should learn how to run it, promote it, market it, develop it, manage it, take an edX. Please, I'm begging you, because, in the end, you'll be better at it when you do your next hit and run, / develop. It's just going to get better and better. And I think it gives a certain level of confidence too, going into things.
Absolutely. And you gave a good example, edX. These are not just any slouch courses now.
No.
They're given by premier universities around the world, and they're free. Now, there are some that you can pay and get like a certification for, and they might only be like $59.
Reasonable.
Certification, very reasonable. But you get really, really good classes. And here's the thing, if you have the discipline to sit down, because it doesn't work for everybody, because not everybody is disciplined enough to do training online. But if you have the discipline to do it, it's so great. And I really do recommend edX. They have business courses all the time.
Yeah, it's just, and all you really need, I can say from experience, is a good basic financial management course, a marketing course, and maybe a business law class, definitely a business law class. Get some IP, get some contracts, get some things like that, and some property classes, but other than that, I think that would be just 3 of them to start, or just even start with the business law, then get to management and marketing. Because you got to know how to work with people too,
But also be leery of I think marketing is probably the worst thing you can take a college course on, just because it changes so quickly, and there are some basics of trying to get someone's attention to buy something.
Well,
But
there's something called marketing management, which is different, and actually, that's probably the better thing, is it combine the two, gets more into why you're doing it. It's thinking about the marketing instead of just saying, here, buy this, buy this, buy this, look for categories and finding your lane. It's more about the why of it and integrating your business and just making decisions on a better level that's involved in the day-to-day management of your business and short-term, long-term decisions. So it's
Right.
a more thoughtful type of class. So, but I agree. Academic marketing can be just so,
and it also depends on the individual, because of who they are, what they want to do.
Yeah.
And also we're asking people who are 16, 17, top 18 years old.
They're on their computers anyway, staring at things and doing homework.
Right, but we're asking them as we asked ourselves to make a decision about what they're going to do for the rest of their lives, which is preposterous.
Well, but it's not saying go sit at a computer for 4 years. It's just saying, can you do this for?
I realize that. What I'm saying is that is still the reality of the situation.
Yeah,
You're right.
That is. And especially when those decisions result in a mortgage-sized loan.
Yeah, that's why just can you buckle down for a couple of weeks versus, and I agree, listen to some keynotes and this and that, but do these a few courses and then knock yourselves out, go back to the coding, go back to the whatever it is you're doing and planning it out and brainstorming with your crew and but just or each one of you take a course, dole it out. You take the marketing course, you take the financial course, you take the law course, powwow, get together, but because all together there's strength in that as well. If you're working with a group.
True. So let's jump into 49th Parallel, movie that apparently everyone except Matthew hadn't seen. Matthew's seen it before, and it is very much it's a British movie. Matt can give us the background on it, but it's really trying to convince the U.S. to jump into World War II, and and also. It's just basically, it is beginning of World War II. There is a German sub that is running around the east coast of Canada and keeps popping into a few places, and they decide to drop off a small party of 6 individuals, and then the Canadians bomb the crap out of their sub, and which apparently was really dumb. Really. And now you have 6 Nazis walking around in the middle of nowhere in Canada, because they're going to fit right in. And you know how Nazis don't stick out at all. And Laurence Olivier, Leslie Howard, Anton Walberg, Raymond Massey. It's directed by Michael Powell, William Powell, and written by, well, I guess original story and screenplay was by Emmerich Pressburger, and I believe they won an Oscar for story. And then the scenario, which I guess is sort of like a story by credit, Rodney Ackland and Emmerich Pressburger. So Matthew, since you know this thing and I don't until having seen it yesterday, what's the dilly, yo?
Just let me throw in a couple more names.
Yeah.
Edited by some chap called David Lean.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cinematography by Freddie Young, who was David Lean's photographer too. So everywhere you go in this film, there is brilliance, there is genius. So this film, as I say, is blatantly a propaganda film, commissioned by Churchill, by British intelligence, who wanted them to make this propaganda film to do exactly what you said, which is to get the Americans interested in supporting the Commonwealth war effort. And in that, it was extremely successful. The film was released on the 24th of November, 1941, and within 2 weeks, the United States had joined the war. So how about that for a successful movie?
That was fast.
That was fast, yeah. Maybe the Japanese had something to do with it,
Yeah,
but you
Well,
know,
a little bit.
Yeah, just a little.
yeah. So 1940. This movie follows on from the one we saw last week and includes Laurence Olivier, also in a propaganda film last week. So in 1940, Britain is getting a severe pasting. We have got that close to being invaded, that close to being destroyed. I mean, in May, June 1940, we were within a week or two of starving. We
Wow.
had no weapons to defend ourselves. The only thing that stopped the invasion was 500 pilots and a few aircraft, you know, that close. And so every effort had to be put in to get American help. And Churchill did a lot of personal diplomacy with FDR, trying to persuade Congress to get involved. But there was this big isolationist movement in the United States. It's hard to imagine, isn't it, having a sort of political system in the United States that's...
The parallels are just, it's almost like, come on. Have you guys seen any old movies?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, an isolationist political movement in the United States that didn't want to get involved in the corrupt old world problems. It's got to be America first, all the way. And yet Churchill and people over here were saying, we've got a lot of bother over here. Could you come and give us a hand? He did an awfully nice job in 1917, 1918. Could you possibly give us a hand? And so the people that were given the job of doing this film were the geniuses of Powell and Pressburger. And this was very early in their career together. It was only about their second or third project together. But between them, they made some of the most beautiful and wonderful films. One film that we all know and love is A Matter of Life and Death, which was made with David Niven in 1946, which was kind of a post-war propaganda film to sort of remind us of what we'd all done together and how we need to keep sticking together. But this was a propaganda film made in the very darkest hour. And in fact, they were filming it, you know, while the Battle of Britain was going on, thinking we might lose. And so it was a really desperate attempt. And they threw the kitchen sink at this movie. I mean, last week the movie we saw did a lot of good work with some models. But this, they built a full-size submarine. They bombed it with real aircraft. These couple of £1,000 worth of explosive to blow the thing up. You know, they weren't messing around it. That's why it looks so real, because it was real. And in addition to this genius couple of Powell and Pressburger, Pressburger was primarily the writer, Powell was the producer director, but really they worked as a team on that, and they had a wonderful telepathic relationship between them that helped them make such good movies. And Pressburger said, well, old Goebbels thinks he knows a thing or two about propaganda. Let me show him what we can do with propaganda. So this was beating Goebbels at his own game. And to beat him at his own game, not only did they put resources in, they got together this amazing team of actors who would then stick with Powell and Pressburger through the rest of their time. Some guy called Laurence Olivier, that people might have heard of. Leslie Howard, again, amazing, wonderful actor, who, of course, died in the war. Played in other propaganda films, including First of a Few with David Niven, and also he played Pimpernel Smith during the war. And after the war, David Niven played The Scarlet Pimpernel, directed by David Lean. So this all going around in circles, which is rather lovely.
And also what I saw that I guess the actors were either donating their salary to a cause or working for a tiny percentage of what they would normally get.
Yes.
And just to mention a couple of others. Anton Walbrook, who we saw in Gaslight a few weeks ago, is a name that people forget now, but an absolutely wonderful actor. He was gay, he was Austrian, he was exiled obviously from Nazi Germany, and so he did his bit by playing a very humane person of German origin in this movie. And that was really important, his role, because there was a lot of pro-German sentiment amongst American people in 1940, not because they were Nazis, and that was reserved for people like Henry Ford, but because there were a lot of people who were of German origin who had natural sympathy for that. So Walbrook portrayed a person who was of German origin, but very humane and civilized, rejecting the evil of Nazism. So that was a very powerful role he played with, beautifully underplayed with great dignity. And Eric Portman played the leading baddie. He played in several Powell and Pressburger films. And he was an actor who was unafraid to play cruel, calculating, complex figures. Absolutely brilliant actor. Again, he's not remembered enough today. And he just plays this so well. And Raymond Massey, who plays a relatively small role at the end of the film, as the guy who punches the light out of the Nazi right in the closing scene. And he again played in A Matter of Life and Death as well. So there was a great team that went on to work together, and that team ethic came through in producing absolute masterpiece that was a propaganda film, but beautifully written, beautifully acted in, beautifully shot, beautifully edited. And so all these years later, when the propaganda isn't quite so much an immediate issue, we can still enjoy it as a great piece of filmmaking.
Wow. Yeah, and this is the thing. Usually when there was a point in school when we were looking at film that we looked at propaganda film, and they were, even though this was blatantly trying to get the US involved in the war, it's still a standalone piece. So even if you did not know there was such a thing as World War II, you can still see that this is a standalone film.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the wonderful thing about it.
I agree. Yeah. Definitely. The story, and I like that there were sort of chapters to the story.
Yeah.
It reminded me a bit, well, it predates, but it sort of seems like it was an inspiration to The Great Escape very much. And then there, I think it's got two different titles, 10 Little Indians, and then There Were None, the Agatha Christie story. So
yeah,
it just
10 Little Indians is actually cited as an influence.
it is
Yeah.
okay. It came up in my mind. Yeah.
Say again, Matthew?
It was originally known as 10 Little N Words.
Right.
Oh, I only know I didn't know. Didn't know that. I thought 10 Little Indians. So anyway, I like the vignettes going through. Initially, I thought, oh, well, where's Leslie Howard? And he's Lawrence. Okay, this is good. But where, so not knowing how the story would unravel, and the original 6 going down, it was great to see it all. Sort of, it was literally a path, a mental path that we were traveling along the journey with them, taking this physical journey across the Canadian wilderness. So
and we're following the bad guys.
we're following the bad guys.
It's such a
wild ride.
Well, it's a wild ride, but it's different to spend time with a bunch of Nazis.
And well, you have to oddly start to kind of like one of them, Vogel, the baker.
Right.
Yeah, the baker.
He's the good bad guy.
He's the good bad guy. So it just starts to, as the story unfolds, you getting to know these people. And I didn't know what a Hutterite was, so they're interesting. But it was a lovely scenery. So just amazing to have the journey across Canada.
And also looking at the structure of it and knowing that it was written by a producer.
But a writer first.
Hold on.
Sorry.
But because the writer is a producer, the producer knows things about like casting and scheduling and all that. So when you look at the entirety of the story, well, we need Larry Olivier for a couple of days here. We need Lawrence Howard for a week here, and instead of having Laurence Olivier for the whole thing or Leslie Howard for the whole thing, and I don't know how this all worked out, but I am guessing I've written one screenplay that was partly designed with this in mind, that it has a really large cast, but it would be, in terms of a producer, be really easy to get people to come in for like a day or two to cover, and then you get to have and to fit in the story, not to just be ridiculous.
For the nice ensemble type arrangement.
Well, and not only the nice ensemble, but also you get the names, you get
Yeah.
them in short amount of time, and they're not there for the entire film. So so if you're a producer and you're a writer and you're a director and everyone's putting their head in, for them to kind of like sit down and go, well, maybe we can get him for this. Maybe we'll make that part like just at the beginning and then kill him off, and then we won't see Leslie until like the end. That'll be like the big ending thing. And that way because it's like you made a bunch of short films with all these cast members that just have consistent casts throughout, which are the Nazis.
Well, it was the Powell and Pressburger synergy and dynamite that they, because it's an odd thing that you've got a producer that's also an artist. Dare I say it?
Yeah.
Sometimes some of them acquire a lot of skills, and we have a lot of actors becoming producers or directors that are producing also. There's some crossover, and it happens, and it's nice, and a lot of independent artists producing because out of necessity they have to. But these two were just so gifted, so inherently just luckily knew what to do. But it's you have the 6 actors through it. No, you don't. You even have it dwindling. It was probably shot in continuity. Had to be.
No, nothing has to be shot in continuity.
Yeah, I guess. Interesting.
You know what? It's interesting, Joe, that you said that, because I was going to say it felt like many different vignettes put together, or many different short films put together. And so when you said that, I'm like, yes, just with the common thread of these Nazis, throughout all of them. So it actually could have been, this was like a little mini film festival if you think about it, with a common theme. And I think it was really nicely done. Going to these Nazi individuals, it shows that even though I think there's some people that are just despicable and miserable all the way through, that there are things about most people that you can find to like. Okay, so like with the baker, he's a Nazi, but is he really? Is he just someone that fell into the fold of, this is what you do for country, and this is what you have to do, and you don't put up a fight, and it's too difficult for me to be the voice of dissent? Is that what the thing is? And is that then the case? We only get to see his humanity. Is there then a level of humanity to the other characters? And it's because they're so tied to this nationalistic idea of Germany and Germany ruling Europe, because you hear them spew rhetoric and spew propaganda the whole time they're there. This is what they're fed. And it's not just Nazi Germany. This is what, propaganda across all types of brainwashing.
The concept of you have to submit, and how many of the population truly is of the mindset of the hatred and the vitriol, and really buying into it, which like we're seeing here, scarily, and who else is just kind of conforming because they're out of terror and fear and going, or in the middle, maybe it sounds like a good idea. Yeah, I can get with this. I'll go along with it, because there are some that sort of bend, it seems. And so to have to go along with the savagery, you have to be of the mindset where on the fence, maybe, and willing to get with it.
On the fence, and then believing that your problems are caused by someone else, which is always the way they scapegoat. So when they talked about Eskimos,
Mississippi Burning.
Yeah, exactly. Take any of those movies. It's all the common theme. In this movie, when they said that the Nazi commander said Eskimos are, quote, sub-apes like Negroes, only one step above the Jews. I know that and I read on our famous all-knowing site, Wikipedia.com, that part was kind of cut when they showed it in the American South. I don't understand why. To me, that seems like it would have supported their whatever. I don't get why they cut it, but it is what it is. But when you look at those types of things, again, it's scapegoating or making somebody else less than, or blaming someone else for your problems, which gives you license to hate these individuals. And there's no If you sit down and talk to somebody who hates, why? They're going to hum and haw all day to find a good reason why, even when you refute it with evidence, because there is no good reason why. Most of it is baseless and based off of stereotype and hatred, just pure hatred. So
and their own pure fear and insecurity and not liking themselves, their own pure fear in the world and having no place for themselves.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. When you've been, and I always say this, when you have been taught that you are the best, or you have because you work harder than other people, and somehow you know deep down this is not true. Somehow you know that you are really just mediocre to regular, okay? And if this person they're going to find out the level of my mediocrity and my fraud will be discovered. That's a fearful thing, because then you lose your footing in society, a footing that you never gain necessarily through hard work. And I'm not saying, I'm just making a blanket case now. You may not have earned this through hard work. There are so many people that climb on the backs of others to get where they are, or got a break because they simply know somebody. It doesn't mean they were the most qualified individual. They just happened to know somebody and got this break. Okay, so that's the thing you look at. And so you're always wondering, oh God, are they going to ask me to do this? Because then they're going to know that I don't do X, Y, and Z, or that I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z. So there's that constant fear of losing your footing in society. And the only way I can keep it is to show unequivocally that everybody else is less than. It's interesting. It's really interesting the way human nature works.
It's hatred as both an offense and a defense. Which is and it just you put up the wall, protect yourself. It's it's mind-blowing. It really truly is.
And also what's interesting is because of what's going on in the US at this point, and because the weather is going to be warming up from now until it gets cold again, we're going to see a lot of people going north over the border, and that's already happened a bunch of times for people who are in fear of being deported if someone finds them in the US with all the ICE raids. So there have been people, I've read a couple of stories where they drove to the Canadian border, and when you run over and they arrest you, but then you ask for asylum and it's Canada.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's starting to be problematic now, a little bit, because I mean, I was listening to NPR the other day, and this was always a thing, but now there is an exodus to the Canadian border, and you just ask for asylum. But they were talking to people who in terms of the effects of what this is going to do eventually. And any country, even though Canada is big, the majority of Canadians live by the US border, simply because it's too cold and too unbearable when you move north. Very few people live, above a certain latitude, I believe. So it's going to be interesting to see how long Canada stays the nice and friendly Canada we know.
I don't know, because we have not always, but we've been able to fake the nice guy thing for a while. So I think Canada, I think it's going to take, because of their prime minister. Also, interesting side note, I guess the Justin Trudeau and Matthew Perry beat up Justin Trudeau from Friends.
What's this about?
What the hell?
I tripped over this, I don't know, on the internet somewhere, and I guess he was doing an interview, and he explained that he's Matthew Perry's.
Were they schoolmates?
Yeah, they were schoolmates, but Justin Trudeau was a couple of years younger, and so Matthew Perry and a friend of his beat the crap out of them, and at that point he was son of the prime minister, I believe.
Right, Pierre Trudeau.
So then Trudeau, not too long, like yesterday, the day before, I had tweeted something, and he said, the longer I've thought about it, and he challenged Matthew Perry to a fight.
That's hilarious.
He wants a rematch.
I saw something that said, well, who wouldn't want a chance? Who wouldn't want to have a chance to punch Chandler?
Like, who wouldn't want to ever want to punch Chandler and Friends? And of course, but the idea that whatever it would take for the sentiment to sway the other way, I don't think is going to happen under their current leadership. I don't know anything about Canadian politics. I don't know how long that guy's going to stay in place. but much like when Obama was in office, like you don't take gay people off the census. Like you don't.
Say what?
They just took gay people off the U.S. Census.
Wait, what? When?
No. That's not. No.
No,
Who? What?
I'm
That's
sorry. Trump,
American citizens. Citizens.
Trump on the U.S. Census. Trump has removed gay as a category to be identified as an individual in the U.S. Census.
So they don't exist. Is that what he's trying to?
Right. And if you look at Russia, if you look at what's going on in Chechnya right now, that's very Russian. It's a very Russian thing to do.
He's just doing what his what his leader told him to do.
Right.
Anyway.
Here we go. Orange jumpsuit. I can't wait. Because this is the beginning of the end. This is the end. The end has begun because it's just too much. It's too much. It's just too many things, too many coincidences. There is no way you cannot explain this away. It's impossible. So, but anyway, regarding the movie, the idea of Nazis essentially invading Canada, kind of, and at some point we have the great scene at the end, which if you haven't seen the movie, stop watching now and go watch the movie. But the end when they do cross the U.S. border, and the Nazi thinks because the U.S. is neutral and that there's U.S. law and he's seeking asylum at the German consulate or whatever, and then you just see kind of like, I don't know what would happen with local police on a regular basis, and sometimes in someone's favor and sometimes not, and he's not on the manifest. He's got to go back. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
And that was such a smart scene, because
It really was.
and customs. It's just that the detail there. With the specificity of manifest and everything that had to go, you could easily have just whizzed past that and gone a whole different way with that scene and skipped it. I don't know. It was just so clever. And in the wiki, I think, or whatever, like people kept hawking about the glitch with the train bridge and the directions and the river. And I'm like, who cares? You get the idea. They're going backwards. It's just, people nitpick, and I'm like, are they realizing how intricate customs are, and the manifests and the details, and they just brought up immigration rules and neutrality and the war and all this other, all in one scene. I'm like, this is smart. This is really smart writing and filmmaking. So I don't know.
But that's typical of pedants. They'll always pick on the irrelevant detail because they can't cope with the big picture placed before them.
I guess. I don't know. It was just, I was like,
but it's also just a great scene, because much like when Portman does his whole big Hitler's great and join us to the group of Germans. What are they called? Hennonites?
Hutterites.
Hutterite. Are they like Mennonites?
Yeah, Mennonites, Amish, they're all that kind of thing.
Okay.
They are among the ites. But
what happened was, in the 17th century, there were a load of Puritan theological movements across Northern Europe, and they couldn't cope with the restrictions placed on their way of life in Europe, and so they decided to skedaddle across the Atlantic. So the first famous group of that were the so-called Pilgrim Fathers, because of course women don't exist in history. They left Britain because they found Britain too intolerant. They tried living in the Netherlands. They found that too intolerant. So they went over to the Atlantic so they could practice their own version of intolerance without being told off what to do. And they were followed later by these Germans, Amish, Hutterites, Shakers, all these geezers. And they're all Protestants from Northern Europe who've all lived this sort of fairly isolationist life of wanting to live by their own rules. And they're still around today.
oh yeah.
Oh
And,
wow.
and what's interesting is their isolationist rules, which, granted, I guess if you're a Nazi, you're thinking, well, these people are kind of like, we're playing to the home team here. This is nothing.
Yeah.
And wrong. That wasn't the case at all. And but the scene, that scene where it's just, everyone's seated, Portman is sort of like walking around like he is addressing troops, and the speed at which the other gentlemen get to their feet for their Heil Hitler salute,
Yes.
like it was a contest to see who could Heil the highest, fastest, and then to have it all, and then and I love that they did this. The shot is wide-ish shot, and you see Portman sit down from behind. And it's just like to see him in this grandiose. They shot him low a couple of times, and you get this one shot they've shown a couple of times. But once you have all the other Nazis go up, do their Heil, they go down, and then Portman slowly sits down.
Because then you get the reaction of
it's like the wind is just like he is so convinced that he is speaking to Germans who agree with him, and to have that flip at that level of passion, at that level of I'm not hiding my agenda whatsoever, and then to have, so who was that? Anton Walbrook was playing.
He's played Peter.
Yes.
Peter.
And I think
Yes.
what Powell and Pressburger were doing there was taking the Nuremberg rallies of Hitler and turning it on their head.
Yep.
So the Nuremberg rallies were
Yeah.
orchestrated by Goebbels. And you watch Trump rallies, they're based on the Nuremberg rallies, the same methodology.
Oh wow.
Right.
Yeah, they are.
And Pressburger and Powell said, right, we'll take him on, we'll take his own ideas and we'll use them against him.
Yeah.
And that's what they did so brilliantly.
The group
And
mentality.
what's interesting is that the I guess there were a few individuals at a Trump rally who were assaulted a little bit, and they and I guess Trump, being the sitting president, he doesn't want to go to court for inciting assault, but the judge said that he could not use the First Amendment as an excuse to get out.
That's why he figures he can change the libel laws in this country.
Exactly. Who does that?
You don't rewrite the Constitution. It's over. It's done. It's not changing.
First of all, you need to know how to read it right.
Matthew, hold on.
What,
Matthew, what is the picture that we're looking at?
This also is just a close-up of the crowd in the Nuremberg rally, just to show you the level of fervor that people had. People swallowed this propaganda hook, line, and sinker. And although, a lot of people in the German forces were just professional soldiers, sailors, airmen, there also were mass belief in this Nazi nonsense. And in the movie, it was shown how it was done, and in this circumstance, it was shown how it would fail ultimately. And you've got to realize that how desperately people believed in that. They honestly thought that Hitler was this Superman who was sent to save them from the disasters that happened to Germany in the post-war period. Remember, we talked about this in Metropolis.
Right.
Germany collapsed at the end of the World War I and then gone on through this period of revolution and counter-revolution. So that it had more than a decade of pain and disaster. And this guy said, give me the power and I'll sort everything out. And so they gave him the power, and but half of them to work in factories and half of them to work in the army, and caused another disaster.
Well, they were suffering in the post-World War I economy, and they lost jobs and everything, similar to what was preached upon here in the election.
I alone can fix it.
Yeah, I'll build roads, Autobahn, I'll do these things and fix it, and I alone. So it draws attention, and people were thrilled, and we'll be better off. No, you weren't. History.
And cut down the laws and cut down the rights of some people. Oh, they're in the way. That's just detail. Jews, gay, they're just awkward. Let's just move those out of the way, and we can solve our problems if they'd only.
A Muslim ban. It's a different religion. Let's signal out people. I mean, this didn't work out well in the 1940s. What makes anyone think it's proper or human or right? I can't. I'm sorry.
Now, Jill's father experienced this firsthand. Jill's father was a tank gunner in World War II, and he fought his way from the Normandy beaches all the way through into Germany. And then he stayed on at the end of the war as an administrator in post-war Germany in the sort of third man kind of scenario of, trying to run the British sector. And he saw the death camps, and he said there is no way that anybody could have the excuse of they didn't know about it, because the smell and the filth and the effect on society was so big, nobody could claim innocence. He also experienced a lot of people spitting on him and abusing him. So this idea that came the end of the war, the Germans said, oh no, it's all over now, let's go and fight the Russians. It wasn't the case. The people had been completely taken in.
I would think that the only thing that they could do is to write it in their mind, is convince themselves to the contrary, because living with that sort of thing on one's conscience would have had to have been just beyond unbearable. That in fact they did know, and just have to say, no, well, yeah, no, to almost trick one's own mind. It's the only way to bear it.
Well, Matthew, isn't this what happened in terms of, they've done all sorts of, that's where the psychology experiments came from in terms of how people respond to power, like Milgram experiment and all sorts of things of how people will just say, well, I was just following orders. Remember the electric shock experiment? Well, they told me to do that. So I did it because I was just following orders. So I can imagine there's also a little bit of that too, trying to absolve themselves of guilt by saying, well, I was told to do this, and if I didn't, the fate would be X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
You get shot.
That's why it's very important that they had to make this film, so to say to the American people, because that's who it was directed at, don't fall for this nonsense. You've got to see with your own eyes what's going on. Don't fall for Hitler and Goebbels propaganda.
There's a new documentary that just came onto Netflix, I think Friday, called Five Came Back. And it's about 5 American directors who went off to make propaganda films for the U.S. in this case, and did go in serve on the front lines and were there. One of them, William Wyler, made Memphis Belle. He was in the Memphis Belle plane on its final bombing run over Germany. And so you see just Frank Capra was in it, and George Stevens, and John Huston, and John Ford, all of them. And if you can get a look at this, it's a 3-hour documentary, and you can watch it. But it's delivered in 1 hour 8 segments separate. And it's just,
what's it called, Colleen?
It's called Five Came Back.
Okay.
And
Five Came Back? Yeah.
And it just came onto Netflix. It does a little bit of intro and backstory, and it's introduced. It's narrated by Meryl Streep, and then the 5 modern contemporary directors.
Overrated actress.
Overrated. I know. Totally. And the 5 contemporary directors who are also speaking throughout the documentary are Spielberg, Coppola, Greengrass, Lawrence Kasdan, and Guillermo del Toro. So they're speaking on, and so it's great to hear their thoughts. First of all, the regard that they have for their predecessors, and the regard that they have for the work, their film body of work, and then their documentarian, because none of these were documentarians. They'd never shot a documentary in their life, and they went over to they did their patriotic duty. A lot of the Hollywood people went and served, just straight up served. They figured they could do what they did best and create, but they would put themselves in harm's way also, and shot these, learned how to make a documentary on the fly and at great risk to themselves. So highly, highly recommend watching this. And I had watched this in about 3 hours after I watched our film. And so I'm sitting and watching what had been a propaganda film for the war, and now I'm watching this right after this World War II American sort of propaganda thing. It's just really.
And what's really interesting about propaganda as film, which now obviously the propaganda from this film is less effective because it's over, but the idea that again, like we talked about last week, human beings are just giant bags of chemicals. And because you can, with music and visuals and whatever can completely manipulate anyone to some degree. With that makes everyone to some degree a little bit susceptible to it, and it's always, and I'm interested, especially when we're talking about Germany and who knew and who knew and when did they know it. At what point are you on the fence and you go for personal survival over doing the right thing? Because I feel like that is what's going on in Congress and the Senate right now. That there seems to be a bunch of people on the fence, but they seem to be leaning towards getting everything to work out for them because they...
But theoretically, they're not on the fence. They have a responsibility to the people. I mean, they're forgetting...
Right, but that's all theory.
That's no, it's really not, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's law.
I
But
mean,
in theory, it's law.
It's bullshit. I'm sorry, I'm going to swear.
No, that's fine. But when you come down to what is rule of law and all of that, rule of law, again, what is the rule of law's take on removing people from the census? Like, when is that?
I don't know if the census. I have an ignorant question. Is the census in the Constitution?
No, it won't be. But it's the effect of it. If you take categories,
it is. Yeah.
Out of the census, that means you can then withdraw federal funding for any kind of programs. That's what it's about. It's about money.
Correct.
Absolutely, and the
Gay
whole
people
thing.
don't exist. We don't follow them.
Yeah, not to get overly political,
And
but
districting.
And districting. Not to get overly political,
Yeah.
but back to the what's new in terms of media scope that you were asking. In social media, there now Facebook has the ability. What is it called? Town hall, where you can contact your either your congressperson, your senator, people that are in your district in government, to contact them with either questions you may have, gripes you may have, etc. So we're starting to see social media, even though they've already been this voice for politics, especially as of late, we're starting to see them take more and starting to see it take more and more of an interest in being a conduit for political action. So now this exists, and there are a bunch of I can attest that the phone lines, quote unquote, the virtual phone lines are going to be very busy for your local and state and national individual representation because of this now. Not just because of it, now there's an extra added piece of this. So everybody who is staunchly, vehemently against gays being taken off the census, there's going to be a lot with that.
Oh, yeah.
With the whole privacy thing, and now all of you idiots sold us out to the ISPs, there's going to be a lot with that. So really, this is going to be the test of who is really a citizen, who takes their citizenship seriously by doing something about this, because it makes no sense. And I'm not saying people should necessarily do something about it, but I am saying that this is going to be the test of whether or not you've had enough of this nonsense.
This is going to cause a rumble, and luckily, though, the lobby at this point and the organizations like GLAAD and LGBTQ movement is so huge and has such a strong voice. Hopefully, though, that and the ACLU and all these other will just bring forth a movement and reaction and response to this as powerful as, with the Muslim, the travel ban, and because it was so hardly fought to get the voice, to get the strength, to get the DOMA. I mean, come on, the Marriage Equality Act. How do you do that in the face of marriage equality and say these are married couples? Exactly. They're not going to count for the census. You have married people, and they're going to say to little children, "Sorry, your mommy and mommy don't count, or your daddy and daddy don't count as people living here."
Yes, they will. Yes.
Yeah, that's on its face is invalid, and there'll be another Supreme Court case on this probably. which will make its way up to the court, and the court will make this right. It's going to take all this. And sadly, this is going to be wasted money because it costs money to bring these cases. It costs time and effort and energy and tears of people who don't understand, families that are, devastated by all this. I mean, for
Well,
what?
Perhaps the money would be there if he would stop coming to Mar-a-Lago every 2
Yeah, I know.
Well, somebody pointed out that I don't know how many months Melania Trump would need to stay at the White House versus in Trump Tower, and they could pay for the entirety of the NEA.
I think they said,
Well,
they said 6 days, the security or something.
Yeah.
The budget is 148 million or something. I don't know.
So this is exactly why people should be really, it's one thing when you have someone that you don't agree with politically. That's something completely different. Now you're messing with my money. Bub, I pay your salary because I pay taxes. How dare you come whenever you like to Florida? How dare your wife, or whatever the hell she is, live someplace else in New York? And not only are they affecting, this is where the selfishness comes in. Not only are they affecting in terms of the security of that building, there are businesses around that damn building that can't function because that degenerate ingrate wants to live there and still wants to maintain it as a residence. How dare you? That should really make people upset, regardless of who you are and what party you align yourself with.
Oh, it did. They had 56th Street closed between 5th and Madison Avenue, and businesses were choking. And this was still the tourist months. And they finally got 56th Street open so these businesses could try to resuscitate. I don't know how successful. There wasn't really a follow-up. I didn't see a follow-up story. But I mean, the job comes with a free house. You get free lodgings as president.
You get a free damn house. Who else has free rent? Who else? Raise your hand. If your rent is free, then perhaps you have something to say.
No.
How dare you?
No, you get a free house.
That's just the ultimate in selfishness.
But
I've never seen anybody like this.
But it also seems like to argue with Trump's own words, as Marilyn's saying in the comments, he said more than once during the campaign he wasn't going to spend all his time golfing, and he spends way more time golfing than Obama. And I honestly, I don't care either way, but there sure seems to be a lot of stuff that's not working. And if you said you were going to not go out and golf and things aren't working, why are you going golfing? Like, shouldn't you go golfing?
Because he doesn't know what to do.
Well, that I know, but just the idea on its face that somehow the double standard that works with Trump and it's, well, he's not taking a salary, all these ridiculous things that everyone just throws back at the argument, at some point that is going, all of this doesn't have to do with Hillary losing. That's impossible. That is, all this Russia stuff is not, no, it's you guys. It's your guys. There's no,
yeah. Well,
but the thing
this
about
has been
it,
coming for a long time.
Right. But Trump has never been in any kind of situation where he is held accountable.
No.
Except when he, bankruptcies, that kind of thing, when he bails out, when he settles, all those kind of things. But in terms of him, getting to him, having him like when Merkel was sitting next to him and he just is in la la land, ignoring a world leader that's sitting.
I truly think he didn't want this job, and I don't think he realized there's accountability in this. When you're not the CEO of when you're the CEO of a business, there's no one. You don't answer to anyone but yourself. When you're the president of the United States, you're in the free world. Sorry, it's a different. But he didn't think this through. It was
no. Go ahead. Sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
He doesn't think anything through. Go ahead.
No. You're right. He never thought anything through. The thing is, and I 100% agree, this was a challenge and a conquering for him. He was told he couldn't do it, shown before that he read it.
Can I get it? Can I get it?
This is the only thing that he has not done. So never mind that he's never done the other things he's done well. He thinks he has, and nobody has contradicted him. That's the thing. You're absolutely right, Joe. There's a whole bunch of yes people around him protecting him, and he never suffers the repercussions for anything he does. So why would he feel any type of remorse or guilt or some type of way? Because there's no repercussions.
He's not capable. He's also not capable.
Well, he's a narcissist. He's a narcissist. So, you have to be, in the right 100% all the time, right? And you know, he's flawless. He's flawless. There's an unimpeachable character, you know, in his world. You know, everything is rosy.
He's
There's nothing.
king in his
He's
world.
king. Yeah, he's king.
Hmm.
So
And his
He's the new
tan
Nero.
is lovely, and he's in the best shape ever, and his hair is gorgeous. This is what he thinks. This is how twisted this individual is. He's something, and I don't want to put it on something is wrong, because he is full well. I really do think something is wrong.
oh,
but I'm not
something's
gonna put it-
wrong. Yeah.
Something's wrong, but the thing is, when you put it on that, then it absolves him of any responsibility of his wrongdoing. Something is wrong, but you're still in control enough to know what you're
Right,
doing.
but there's
and it-
also
and
there's something wrong, and all the people around him know there's something wrong, and they're not doing anything.
And it's not to say that there aren't egos in politics. To get to the national level in
Sure.
politics, you have to have a healthy
Even the local level, you got
ego. You've got to really think.
Oh yeah,
you know
local
what?
politics is even worse.
Yeah, you got to think yourself pretty wonderful to get there.
or use social media at all.
Yeah.
I wish he wouldn't.
but you also at times you got to realize that the time's going to come when you're going to get knocked down.
So,
And-
I've just thought with it back to this movie. Can you imagine 1940, 41, all this mayhem's going on, and FDR, instead of getting on with it, he's just like tweeting and just talking nonsense. I mean,
Oh, can you
all would
imagine?
have gone to hell and never come back.
Oh,
And also
these-
recommending brands of cigarettes to smoke.
These Germans are so these Germans are just really awful. Sad.
Sad, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but you know what, Matthew, it's really interesting when you put it in that sense. When you look at if what happened during what's happening now happened during World War II or even World War I or at any other point in history, what really would have happened had social media existed in the sense that we know it now? There's no damn way. There is no damn way. And we've come so to this point where all of this is permissible. It's very, very interesting.
But he is also
the scariest thing is that nuclear weapons were used. And imagine he's president. We did drop 2 atomic bombs. How many?
Yes.
I don't know how many we had. I don't
No,
need.
dropped 2. Dropped far more than 2. Dropped 2 on purpose. There was also quite a few dropped by accident.
Well, they did tests.
No, I'm not even talking about them. I'm talking about the ones dropped by accident. They dropped 2 on Spain by accident for a start.
Oh, and here we go with somebody who knows history. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know when they used to cart nuclear bombs around an aircraft? An aircraft went rather badly wrong and crashed over Spain, and they dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Spain. One on the land, one in the water. And they also dropped a couple in the Atlantic as well. So yeah, there's been a lot more than 2 bombs dropped, even by on purpose.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
It
I
can be
didn't know
pretty
that
stupid
either.
to drop a bomb either on purpose or by accident. It's a pretty dumb thing to do. I live on a planet. What shall I do? I'll fill it with poisonous plutonium. That'll be a good idea.
The one thing about all this that I don't understand, and it seems kind of basic for smart people, and I'm not saying I'm smart, I'm just saying, like, for smart people who have been in office before, but how do you not see the interconnectedness of the world? How do you not see the necessity for at least some degree of cooperation? And how do you not see that, especially for a country like the US, to go 100% nationalist is not good for the economy?
No,
Just not. It's
not
like
an option.
101 level stuff.
No.
Well, these are people who have never been listening to the whole arguments of pro-cooperation and pro-doing things and globalization. They never agreed with it, so they just stopped paying attention. And so while we're, the rest of the critical thinking world is trying to make these things work, they're busy not listening, trying to make their brand of things work.
This is why Trump hasn't released, I'm convinced, I've been convinced since day one, the reason why he hasn't released his tax return is because he's doubtless got income coming from all corners of the world and investments in places he doesn't want anyone to know about. But I guarantee you most of his cabinet and all these people have also got investments, because there are some very lucrative places to earn stock dividends from, that are pharmaceutical companies and other companies overseas that none of them want to divest of. And a lot of them now have their assets in blind trusts because it's required of the little people, not the president, but the little people, to put their money in blind trusts. But these foreign investments, and they'll continue to want to earn money from this global marketplace that is so awful and so dependent upon harmony and cooperation and interconnectedness in the world. But, you know, that's where we're closing up, closing shop and huddling in this one little country here. But they're all benefiting. This tiny little subset of people is benefiting, I can tell you, globally from the global financial structure that is going on. I guarantee, because of this, what I saw in my former life of the investments that go on and the far reach that they have, and they were all invested in the same things, all of them.
So back
Back to the Nazis.
Back to the Nazis. No, not the ones that are running the White House. The other one, the one that Eric Portman was playing.
You have to. Can you classify the right Nazis, Joe, for us?
Not so many Nazis and nationalists, aren't there? Right part. I guess as this is the 71st week of doing Classic Movie Salon, so 71 weeks, and when we watched the movie with William Shatner, when The Intruder, like as we have watched a bunch of movies, and it was during the campaign, and we were talking about how we never learn our lessons, and then we get to the point where we are now, and this almost seems like a ridiculous plot for a movie that we haven't seen yet. And I don't know when. I don't like, when are we gonna start making propaganda? when are we going to get some propaganda going that's going to flip people to see what the hell's going on?
That's what independent film, I think, is all about.
Yeah.
You know, and these low budget films that come out now that have to be made because it's the best chance. Of course, no one sees, but someone sees, and they get a message out because you can tell a better story in small films and new media and online, and even in Snapchat stories with screaming chefs, you know.
And like you said, television, new media and television.
New media, television.
But you see some of these shows that are doing some amazing things with one episode of Atlanta. For example, if you've ever seen the show Atlanta, Donald Glover's show, one episode of Atlanta was totally a spoof on the whole structure of race and class. And they did this. Well, it was two episodes actually. One was where they were going to somebody's house, and they were doing a Juneteenth celebration, but the Juneteenth celebration was almost like a celebration of slavery. And the whole thing was just, I laughed the entire episode because it was just a mockery of that system and how there's this kind of new slavery where the descendants perpetrate that type of thing. So this was a Juneteenth celebration happening at the house of a Black woman, and it was just, they walked in like, what the hell? And her husband was white, but thought he was woke, and was like reading poetry from some African American, it was ridiculous the whole way the thing was written. And then they did another one where there was they did these spoof commercials in between for things like malt liquor and those types of things. It was hilarious, but it was so on point.
Yeah,
so I think there are a lot of brilliant shows on television that are calling power into question and what hegemony is doing. So I think it's happening.
Well, this is the way, and it's small, but it's mighty. You know, it's very David to the Goliath, and I think that this is it gets out, and you get the snowball effect. Hopefully, something catches fire.
But my only fear in regards to what propaganda can do now, just in any form, whatever form it is, internet shows, whatever, that with the ability to kind of stay in your own world and listen to, regardless where you sit on the fence politically, you can hear what you want to hear, and you can hear opinions that you agree with without, on either side of the fence, very easily. And so if your propaganda is coming from sources that serve your worldview, then
Yes.
exactly, then how do you not only make the propaganda that will, and like make, like, if you're going to fight Nazis, what, and it's now, how do you get someone's attention to even show them the propaganda, and then how do you get them to have that propaganda land, have any impact, and have any emotional or philosophical impact?
That's a valid point, because now what you were
Mhm.
talking about before with the level of fragmentation, there are so many different places to get your content. How do you get a critical mass together to see that content?
And
So
even if
that's
it's
a
not
that's a
but it may not be a critical mass, it just be a mass. But
yeah, a mass.
I was
Yeah,
talking
exactly.
to somebody about doing political stand up, which I did for a long time, political topical, and the thing about it is that I would only be funny if I was talking to people who politically agreed with me. Like
Yeah.
I could not go to Alabama and do the same material and
No.
not get booed off the stage. So this idea that like comedy is going to help, and yeah, comedy is great, and I think it helps people who, and I feel bad for the right, because I don't have any funny conservative people that I know of.
Mm.
Dennis Miller used to be funny back in the day, but to have liberals listen to liberal comedy that is for liberals doesn't hit anybody else.
Doesn't it?
You're right.
You're
How do you
just,
know?
well, it's not that well,
I mean, Bill Maher is having people on every Friday night, and he's purposely inviting people from the other side and trying really hard to find points to agree on. And sometimes it's a very weak point that they find, but he's determined to do just that. What you're saying, Joe, to find a place to start in a
But
discussion.
I think you're right, Colleen, but by and large, the people that are going to watch that are still the people who agree with
Yes,
that standpoint.
but
So even if you invite somebody that is, okay, he's inviting people that are politically different from him, that think differently from him, the people that are the audience are probably
but you
going
got to
to be
figure
less.
one or even if 5 people from that guest's contingency say, oh, they're gonna come because they want to see him annihilate Mar or something. And and in a lot of cases it gets heated because HBO puts excerpts on the YouTube, sometime, and you see it. And so it's interesting. So maybe 5 of them come and they tell their friends, or it's tiny. And you're right, because it might not draw, it's to going to Mar's audience. But if and he has Republican people on his panel, politicians and pundits, and this and that. You gotta figure one of them. It's like peeking in a peep show box. They're getting curious. They're gonna know. They're not telling, and then yes, they'll go back and talk to somebody in a private dark corner somewhere. Talk to one because I don't know. Isn't that how a movement starts?
I don't know. I guess trying to look at what all the players who made 49th Parallel had to deal with in terms of just making it and getting it out versus anybody now making something and getting it out, when who knows how many movies will be made this year. Literally, who knows
Right.
how many television shows will be made this
It's
year. So once you have that enormity of content to consume, more than any other point in history for the citizenry, the people who are just watching stuff, raising their families, working their jobs. Politics are forced upon them. They want to just vote and leave. And you go do what you need to do, and I'll see you in 2 years, and over and over and over. When that doesn't work anymore, when you can, like some of the conservative stuff that's gone down, even during the Trump campaign, and people looking a little Nazi-ish and they're saluting, like that. I just always imagined that no one would put up with that. No one would give people a forum for that. And now we're at the end of the show, but it's just interesting to note how harder it is in some ways to get propaganda out, and how much easier it is, especially with targeted ads and all the rest of it and everything that Facebook can do. Regardless, we're all recommending 49th Parallel. It's free on YouTube. Definitely watch it, and definitely watch it with both that history and the current history in mind. And next week we're watching A Wish, which I haven't seen and I chose, so if it sucks, sorry. The 1936 crime drama, Marlene Dietrich and Gary Cooper. I have no idea, but I saw crime and comedy, and I'm like, I could use a little crime and some comedy.
Yes.
It'll be good.
Cool. And again, Marilyn, thanks for hanging out with us. And if you're watching this on the replay, you can catch us live, classicmoviesalon.com on Sundays. This has been our 71st episode. Congratulations, all involved.
Yay!
Yay!
Including
All
Marilyn.
right.
The 71st on the 49th. How about that for a combination?
Magic.
Wow.
Somebody play that number, 7149.
So
Slowly approaching the 100th episode.
Yes.
Oh my God, we'll have to have cake, or that's the one we drink on.
Yes, that'll be the drunk classic movie salon.
Drunk classic movies. Champagne.
All right, so we'll see you all next week. And thanks again, Tachi, Matthew, Colleen.
Thank you.
Great hanging out with you.
Yay.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.